Good morning. Greetings to all of you. It's good to be here. Feels like it's been a while since I've been up here. But I trust that God has something for us this morning as we look into His Word. My topic this morning will be from the book of Nehemiah. And I read through this book recently, and there's a lot of things that jumped out at me, and I'd like to share some of those this morning. There's some wonderful messages here for us, challenging, extremely challenging to me. Because what a lot of these lessons that I found in the book of Nehemiah are this. Nehemiah, as we know the story, is working in the courts of the king. He's a cupbearer, and he hears about what's happening in Jerusalem, and he does something about it. And throughout the course of the book, he's going back, he becomes the governor of Jerusalem, rebuilds the wall, organizes that, and leads reforms. And so, the thing that has challenged me here in this book has been a challenge to me, and is Nehemiah as a leader. Nehemiah as a leader. And we might ask the question, and I might ask the question to myself, am I a leader? And I want you to pause a little bit and ask yourself that question. Am I a leader? Hey, well, before we answer that, let's answer this question. What is a leader? You know, if you ask a lot of different people, you'd probably get a lot of different answers. But this morning, I'd like to give it a very simple definition and then answer the question. A leader is someone who has influence. A leader is someone who has a follower or followers. And if you think of a leader like that, you'll find that most of us in this room are in some capacity a leader. If you lead a home this morning, you're a father, you're a leader. If you lead someone at work, if you're a boss, you're a leader. If someone reports to you, you can influence their life, you're a leader. If you're a teacher this morning, you're a leader. If you're a parent, you're a leader. If you're a mom, you're a leader. And what I hope to share this morning are 4 principles from the first 2 chapters of Nehemiah that I trust will bless you and inspire you to grow as a leader in your God-given role. Whatever your sphere of influence is, that sphere of influence might be with 2 children in your home. That sphere of influence might be with 10 employees in your business. That sphere of influence might be you're the pastor of a congregation. Whatever your sphere of influence is, we can all learn from Nehemiah here. We can learn to grow. And I feel like if I take an honest look at my own heart and my own life, at where I've come from and the struggles I've had and the struggles I have today, that struggle is often a struggle to grow. We see our own failures. We see our own weaknesses. We see who we are. And we strive to be better teachers. We strive to be better parents. We strive to be better leaders tomorrow than we were yesterday. And I trust that is your heart and your story as well. We are better parents than we were 5 years ago, I trust. We're better teachers than we were 5 years ago. We're better bosses than we were 5 years ago. I trust it's our story that we are growing. And we owe it. One of the premises here is we owe it to those who are following us. We owe it to those who are behind us to be better leaders, to become better leaders, to grow. We owe it to them. We owe it to our wives. We owe it to our children. We owe it to those that follow us to become better leaders. And many of us are those leaders that I'm talking about. So let's look at the book of Nehemiah here. Chapter 1. Let's read, and then we'll dive into this. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, and it came to pass in the month of Chislev in the 20th year, I was in Shushan the palace. Then Hanani, I said it right at home. Hanani, one of my brethren, came, and certain men of Judah, and I asked them concerning the Jews that had escaped, that left the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the remnant that are left of the captivity there in the province are in great affliction and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass that when I heard these words, I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted, and prayed before the God of heaven, and said, I beseech you, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God that keeps covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive, and thine eyes open, that you may hear the prayer of your servant, which I pray before you night and day, for the children of Israel thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned both against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dealt very corruptly against you. We have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou hast commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I beseech you, the word which you commandest your servant Moses, saying, if we transgress, you will be scattered abroad among the nations. But if you turn to me and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast out unto the uttermost part of heaven, yet will I bring them from thence, and will bring them unto the place that I have chosen to set my name there. Now these are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and your strong hand. O Lord, I beseech you, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name, and prosper, I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. One of the things that we see here with Nehemiah is when he hears the problem, when he hears the issue, when he hears what's wrong, when he hears the cause, Jerusalem is burnt with fire. His response here is appropriate, it's right. His response is, both me and my fathers have sinned. He didn't push the blame on someone else. He said, if only they had obeyed back then, I wouldn't be in this situation. He didn't say, because my parents failed, I'm here, and it's their fault. He said, I have sinned. I've made the mistake. I've not done righteously. I have failed. And one of the greatest things, the things that challenged me the most in the past few years is this. One thing about Nehemiah here, and this is maybe my principle number one here, and there's no particular order, it's just as they're coming. But if we are to lead, we need a willingness to change. We need a willingness to change. If we are to lead, we need a willingness to change. And I've found that change is so incredibly difficult. It's so hard. Sometimes it's soul-wrenchingly difficult because you feel the inadequate parts of your soul, and you're called to this task, and you feel like you're inadequate. And you feel you know your shortcomings, you know your weaknesses, and you know you need to change if you're going to make any kind of impact here in this situation. And it's so hard, and it's so difficult, and it sometimes tears you apart. That's what it's done to me. It means admitting that I was wrong. It means that I've made mistakes. That's part of change. You know, I made mistakes here, and I need to be doing things different. But what's even more difficult, what I find even more challenging, is not just admitting that I was wrong, but going through the transformation that needs to take place in order for us to become what we need to be. It's kind of like the butterfly and the caterpillar. The caterpillar has to go through a process that's difficult, and some caterpillars don't make it. But they need to go through that struggle and that fight to become something different. And that's often where we find ourselves. We have to be able to go through the transformation. Kind of like there's a saying that we've probably heard that says, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. Have you heard that saying? That's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Who we are is often so deeply ingrained in us. Who we are because of how we're raised or whatever influences we got as we've gone through our lives. Who we are is so deeply ingrained that it's so hard often to change. You know, when I think about the children of Israel leaving Egypt, God taking them out of Egypt was actually the easy part. He spent the next 40 years trying to get Egypt out of them. That was hard. And that's where we often find ourselves. That's where I often find myself. The easy part is leaving Egypt. The hard part is getting Egypt out of me. And so the thing that I see here in Nehemiah and that I found in myself is I need a mindset, we need a mindset of growth. We're willing to grow. We're willing to break out of our comforts, our comfort zones. We have to have this thing that I have not arrived. I have not reached the pinnacle. And guess what? I never will. I never will reach the pinnacle where here I am the leader I need to be. I will have arrived. I am here. Hello, everybody. I'm on top. We will never come to that place. We will always be growing. As long as we live, we will be growing, and we will need to become better leaders, better for the people that follow us. That is growth. A willingness to grow. Willingness to grow. We have to have that appetite where we're willing to grow, willing to change, willing to become who we're called to be. Willing to become who we're called to be. And who are we called to be? And this is point number 2. So number 1 is a willingness to change. Well, before I move on to point number 2, there's one more thing. And about a willingness to change, that Jesus, when he started speaking on the Sermon on the Mount, the very first thing he said was this: blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And that word, poor in spirit, ties very much in with the willingness to change. The word poor in spirit is translated as learners, a student. Blessed are the learners, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. If I'm too proud to learn, and this is sometimes a problem with students in school, they don't want to learn because they think they know better than the teacher knows. And with that attitude, learning has a difficult time taking place. But until the student subjects himself to the teacher, bows his heart to the teacher, and accepts that the teacher knows more than they do, then we're in an attitude of learning can take place. Learning can't take place until that happens. And so we as people, as human beings, need to bow to things that transcend us, things greater than us. Learn and grow, humble ourselves, and grow and humble ourselves and grow. Why? Number 2, we need a cause bigger than ourselves. That's my point number 2. In order for us to be leaders, we need a cause. We need a cause, and that cause has to be bigger than just me and those immediately from me and my family. That cause has to be bigger than that, has to be greater than that. If my motivation for being a leader, wanting to be a leader, is so that I can tell other people what to do, I can be the boss, I can be in charge, I can be the man giving commands, if that's my motivation for leading, because I enjoy being in charge, because I want to be in control, there's not a lot of impact that we can make with that attitude. And neither will it carry us very far, because when it really, really comes down to it, when the rubber hits the road, and anybody that's been in any capacity of leadership, the bigger your sphere of influence, I think the more you'll say this is true. It's probably especially true for church leaders. Leading is hard. Leading is hard. It's hard. And unless we have a deeply rooted, a deep-seated why that's firmly entrenched in our soul of why we're doing what we're doing, we're not going to make it. Because it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. Unless we have something deep within our soul that gives us the why, that gets us out of bed and gets us going and keeps us going, unless we have a why, what's the point? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with the challenges? Why am I going through the difficulties? If there's no reason except to glorify me, my own self-interest, what I want, right? Eventually that breaks down. Unless I have a cause greater than myself. And that's where we find David as a shepherd boy, as a young man. He comes, when he visits his brothers, he comes to the battlefield, and he hears Goliath, and he hears the challenge, and he hears the taunt. What's his response? Is there not a cause? Is there not a cause? Don't we have a God in Israel? We need to defend our people. Is there not a cause? And this morning, we have a cause. We have a cause. We have a call that is worth laying down our life. We have a call that's worth being willing to change for, being willing to grow for, being willing to die for. We have a cause bigger than ourselves. And that's what Nehemiah had here. Nehemiah could have been perfectly happy as the king's cupbearer. He had it He had it good. He was in the palace. He was close to the king. Cupbearers ended up often being the king's advisors. He was living in the lap of luxury, of influence. He was the king's cupbearer. Very likely the queen that was sitting beside the king here in chapter 2, verse 6, could have been Esther. It could have been Esther. And here he is, Nehemiah. He's in the court. Life is perfectly fine for him. It will not cost him anything to just stay there and just live his life, the rest of his life there. He's perfectly happy. He's perfectly fine. He's okay. He's got it made. But when he hears of a cause, he says, I have to do something about this. I have to do something about this. And we read this in chapter 2. He comes into the king's presence and he says, wherefore the king said to me, why is your countenance sad? You're not sick. This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid and said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad? When the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lies waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire. Is there not a cause? Look, this is the place where God has says He's going to put His name. And look, what does it look like? It's burned with fire. The gates are destroyed. Is this not a cause? Nehemiah found his cause. And it took him out of luxury. It took him out of his position, out of his sphere of influence to somewhere far away, where a few chapters later, we're reading in chapter 4, the end of chapter 4, it says, so neither I, nor my brethren, nor my servants, nor the men of my guard which followed me, none of us put off our clothes, saving that everyone put them off for washing. This man had a cause. He had a mission. He had a goal. He had a purpose. And it drove him. It drove him to do what he did. It pushed him out of his comfort zone. It pushed him out of his luxury. It pushed him out of his position and said, I have a cause. There is a gates burned with fire. The city where God's glory dwells has been destroyed, and I'm going to go build it. Number 3, I'll give you my point, and then we'll keep reading here in chapter 2. Number 3, so number 1 is the willingness to change. Number 2 is a cause bigger than ourselves. And number 3 is we need to be willing to be criticized. We need to be willing to be criticized. And I want to read here in chapter 2. So the king said unto me, and the queen also sitting by him, how long shall this journey be? When will you return? So I pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said to the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. And a letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace which appertain to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me according to the good hand of the God upon me. And when I came to the governors beyond the river, and gave them the king's letters, now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. But when Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. And these two men, as soon as they heard that Nehemiah was coming, they started making trouble. And so I come to Jerusalem and was there 3 days, and I arose in the night, and some few men with me, neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was there any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon. And I went out into the night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, to the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. And he's touring the city, and he comes back to the rulers and says to them in verse 17, "You see the distress that we're in, how Jerusalem lies waste, and the gates thereof, they're burned with fire. Come, let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach." And then I told them of the hand of my God, which was good upon me, as also the king's words, which he had spoken unto me. And they said, "Let us rise up and build." And so they strengthened their hands for this good work. But when Sanballat the Horonite, and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arabian heard it, they laughed us to scorn, and despised us, and said, "What is this thing that you do? Will you rebel against the king?" But then I answered them and said to them, "The God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore we, his servants, will arise and build, but you have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem." Nehemiah faced opposition. He faced people that laughed at him and despised him because he had a dream, because he had a vision, because he had desires. They said, "You're not going to do that. What are you doing? You're going to do what? And why are you building a wall? You're going to rebel again? Why are you doing this?" And later, one of them said, "They're going to build this wall, and a fox is going to run on top of it. It's just going to fall over." You're not going to do this. You can't make it. Who do you think you are, Nehemiah? Who do you think you are, trying to make this place into something? What are you trying to do? Who do you think you are? And they tried to stop him. And they tried to distract him. And they tried to intimidate him. And he got a lot of opposition. And I think that we, no matter where we find ourselves, in what some position, some place of leadership, not everybody is just going to go along with you every time, right? If you're a teacher, you know that it doesn't work that way. If you're a parent, you know it doesn't work that way. If you're a boss, you know it doesn't work that way. Not everybody always sees things your way or does things just the way you'd want them to do. Some may be openly hostile. Some may be opposed to us. Some may speak bad against us. But is our cause, is our reason big enough to sustain opposition? Is the why that we have great enough that opposition does not deter us, does not stop us, does not distract us, does not deter us, and does not stop us from doing what we know we're called to do? Is our cause big enough? Can our vision overwhelm our critics? Is our cause bigger than them? Can we look past the criticism and see our worthy calling? Are we willing to push through when we're laughed at, when we're despised for the visions that we have and the dreams that we have and the hopes that we have? Are we willing to push through? Criticism is really what it is an opportunity. Criticism is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn. Maybe the critic has something that they can teach us. Maybe they're seeing something that we don't. Maybe they have something. Maybe there's something there. Are we open-minded where we can learn even from the critics in our lives? Criticism is an opportunity to check our vision. Are we still aligned? Are we still headed where we want to go? Are we still going? Are we still on course? Are we still following the track? Are we still going where we want to go? Criticism is a time where we can look at our lives and examine ourselves and evaluate ourselves and say, okay, am I still holding course? Am I still aligned? Am I still going where I want to go? Is this going to take me where I want to be in 5 and 10 years from now? And criticism can make us check that vision. Are we actually wanting to still go there? Is this, maybe I need to correct my course a bit. Is this where I want to go? It can test our resolve. How strong are we? How willing are we to go through difficulties and hardships to get to where we want to go? It can test our resolve. And because sometimes we do make mistakes. Sometimes we do fail. Sometimes our own personal desires do come up and get in the way. Sometimes our egos come up and get in our way. Sometimes our selfishness gets in our way, and we get criticism. Well, you did this, or you did that, or what happened here? And it's a good time to check, to learn, to grow, to test. Am I on track? Criticism can test our vision and be a catalyst for change. Sometimes we need someone to come along and push back on us. Say, why are you doing that? Where are you going here? What are you doing? And we can use that as a catalyst for change. It can help us change. It can be the thing that brings us over to the edge. How we handle criticism can be a great indicator for where we're at as a leader. Can we be criticized? And come along and say, hey, this is not working out here. Can we handle that? Or does it make us insecure? Or does it make us double guess ourselves? Or does it make us quit? Or does it just steal our resolve? Criticism is a great indicator for where we're at as a leader. How we handle it. And criticism can come from many different angles. Here, in Nehemiah's case, it came from enemies, outside, right? And Nehemiah, that was fairly easy to deal with, right? It's like, you guys have no business being here. You have no right. You have no place here. You don't belong here. I'm not listening to you. He responded to that criticism appropriately. It comes from many different angles. It can come from without. It can come from within. It can come from those you work with, the people that you interact with, the people that are closest to you every day. And am I willing to hear them? Am I willing to hear them? Am I willing to change? Can I make this not about me, but can I make this about growth, about growing as a leader, about growing who I am and growing in the capacity that God has called me to serve in? Or is our response, don't tell me what to do? No one can tell me what to do. How we respond to criticism is hugely telling on what kind of leaders, how kind of people we are. How do we respond to criticism? Does it make us look at ourselves and say, yeah, you're right, I do need to change here. I do need to grow. And if we're the critic, just to maybe balance this out, if we're the critic, are we willing to let people have this space to grow? Growth is hard. When you're calling someone to grow, you're saying, hey, you need to change this about your life. That's not going to happen just like that, just because you want them to change. Can we give people the space to grow, the time to grow? Growth is hard. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not a just boom and I'm going to be different. We transform slowly as we start thinking differently. Like Romans 12 says, he says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. You start thinking about these things differently. and we renew our mind, and that's what transforms us. And ultimately, all transformation leads us to becoming the kind of people that God wants us to be, to becoming like Jesus. It's the ultimate transformation. But sometimes we need to be willing to be criticized. All right, so number one, we need to be willing to change. We need a cause bigger than ourselves. And I think we understand that if we're going to endure criticism, right? If we're going to let someone tell us, hey, you need to get your act together here. You need to be doing a better job over here. Then we better have a cause. Otherwise, that criticism is not going to go over very well. Like, why you criticize me? Like, what's your problem? Right? We better have a cause. We better have a reason. We better have something that's bigger than us. And number four, they all flow together to me so much. But number four is we need to be others focused in our leadership. We need to be others focused. You know, as human beings, we follow people. We start following people that we feel have our best interest in their minds. Those are the people that become leaders. We feel like they're acting in our best interest. They're acting for the good of the whole. They're looking out for the best of the group. They're looking out for the whole of the group, and they're going to make decisions not based on what will benefit them, but will do the greatest good for all of us. That's the people that we say, okay, you be our leaders. Because we trust that's what they're going to do. We trust that they will look out for us. And the decisions that they make will be for our greatest good. They are focused not on themselves, they're focused on others, and they're focused on the whole. That's why we put them in leadership. That's why people trust them, because this is how they live. And so this is something that we can all learn from. Nehemiah wasn't in Jerusalem, like I said a little bit ago, to make a name for himself. He had it good. He could have stayed in Persia. Would have been great for him. Right? Wouldn't have cost him anything to stay there. He wasn't in Jerusalem to make a name for himself. And as you keep reading the book of Nehemiah, that becomes very clear in later chapters. He uses his own money, he uses his own finances to try to redeem Israelites that had been sold as slaves in surrounding nations. He uses his own money to feed, as the governor, to feed the court. He doesn't take the governor's salary. He doesn't do anything that the previous governors did. He doesn't put taxes on the people like previous governors did. He is others focused. Everything he does for the benefit of Jerusalem, for the people of Israel. He's there to rebuild. He's there to help. He's there to serve. He's a leader that's using his influence for the good of the whole. That's who he is. That's how he's living. He was here to serve. And so, when there's a leader that makes decisions, when there's a leader that makes a decision that we know is in their best interest, in their own best interest and not in the interest of a whole, it bothers us. There's something deeply rooted in us that the people that we trust, the people that we put in leadership above us and we submit to them, are people who will have our backs. And when someone comes along, and we can probably think of different scenarios. This happens a lot in the business world. This happens a lot this happens in pastors and leaders everywhere, where someone comes and he makes his decision not based on the good of the whole, but he makes his decision based on his own personal self-interest, we know how damaging that is. That is damaging because it destroys something deeply rooted in us, the desire to trust. It destroys the trust that we have in that leader. Because leaders, they're supposed to put others first. That's what they're supposed to do. That's the kind of people they're supposed to be. That's why we made them the leader in the first place. And they come along and they blindside us by making a decision that benefited them. And it deeply, deeply bothers us. And some people never recover when their pastor, when their leader, when their boss does something that comes along and puts his own interest ahead of the whole. That has hurt so many people. It devastates us when leaders advance their own interest at the expense of the whole. It's devastating. The consequences are huge. And this is not just something true in church, it's true everywhere. We have this expectation from our leaders. To use a military example, in the U.S. military, the higher ranking you are, the further back you are in the food line. Senior officials eat last. If the commander-in-chief is at a meal, he's at the back of the line. He's at the very back. There's no one behind him. The commander-in-chief is in the back of the line. Leaders eat last. And there's something deep within us that resonates with. Because we trust that our leaders will do things for our best. We trust that our parents will do things for our best. I heard this example recently. If I, as a parent, would tell you that I eat first, and once I'm done eating, I feed my children, what kind of parent do you think I would be? Would you call me a good parent? If I told you, I eat, and when I'm done, I give the rest to my children. Would you call me a good parent? I don't think so. You're a horrible parent. You eat first, and then you feed your children? This is intrinsic. We all know that we are supposed to take care of our children first. And then we make sure we're okay. This is born into us. And so when someone comes along, a leader, and violates that, they violate us. And this makes sense. Let's say in the military, let's take that example further. If I'm in the military and I'm in a high-risk situation like that, where I'm in a battlefield, and I know that back there is my leader, my general, my superior, and he is going to call the shots. He's going to give the orders, and I'm going to march by them. I know, here in the military, I know that my life is on the line. He holds my life in his hands. Right? He holds my life in his hands. But I trust that he will make a decision with my and the group's, not necessarily mine, but the group's best interest in mind. He will make a decision based on that. The flip side of that is I, as the soldier, need to be okay with whatever he decides. I need to be willing to actually lay down my life for the greater good. I need to be willing to lay down my life for the greater good. And I need to trust that my commander, his primary interest is not his own. His primary interest is in the good of the whole. And so if I don't trust the leader, if I disdain him, if I don't think he's competent, if I don't know what I'm fighting for, I have an incoherent vision, where am I going? Then the sacrifice is not worth it. What am I sacrificing for? Why are you calling me to sacrifice? Just for the sake of sacrifice? Who am I fighting for? Why? Right? If I'm living for myself, then what am I fighting for? Why am I being inconvenienced? Why am I willing to be criticized? Why would I want to be a leader? Why would I want to change? If there's nothing to fight for. So the four things are a willingness to change, a cause bigger than ourselves, a willingness to be criticized, which comes very much hand in hand with willing to be changed, and a need to be others focused, which goes very much hand in hand with a cause bigger than ourselves. I think we can all find ourselves in a place where we know that we have a cause bigger than ourselves. We have a call that's greater than just my life. We have a whole here that is greater than the sum of any individual part. And that whole is something that we need to defend, that we need to protect, that we need to stand up for, that we need to grow, that we need to love, that we need to serve. This whole. And the decisions that we make as mothers and fathers, as teachers, as leaders, are things that will benefit the whole. Where we are others focused, where I'm willing to lay down my life for the greater good, that I'm willing to lay down my life for the good of all. Not for the good of some, for the good of all. This is a whole. We move together. We go together as a unit. We are part of the same band. We march together. I want to read something in Ezra. These are amazing books of the Bible here. This kind of a trilogy here of Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. All three of them books were about individuals who were part of the captivity. They were very likely from noble families in Jerusalem. Daniel, Nehemiah, Esther. They weren't just slaves in Persia. They were people of influence, very likely part of the first captivity, were nobles, and important people of Jerusalem got taken as captives back to Israel. That's probably who Daniel was. That's probably who Esther was. They were noble. They're from the upper class, the ruling class of people, and all three of them, they're stories of amazing courage and strength in incredible adversity, in incredibly hard situation. Esther found herself in an incredibly difficult position. That was not easy. The whole story from beginning to end. There was nothing but courage and determination in there. Same with Daniel. Like, you're a captive, yet you're working for the good of Babylon, your captors, Persia. Incredible man. Nehemiah, Ezra, the whole story. These three captives, there's something that we can learn. From them. I want to lead this to a conclusion here. Ezra chapter 9. Ezra chapter 9, we have Ezra coming. This is also in Jerusalem. And he comes and he tells them, or he got told that the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, have not separated themselves from the people of the land. They're doing the abominations of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Jebusites and the Ammonites and the Moabites and the Egyptians and the Amorites. They've taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons. And the holy seed have mingled themselves with the people of those lands. And even the rulers, the hands of the princes, the rulers, they're the biggest culprits here. He says, they are the chief in this trespass. And he says, when I heard this is Ezra now, I rent my garment and my mantle. I plucked off the hair of he literally tore his hair out. Have you ever heard? I want to tear my hair out. Well, he actually did. And off my beard. And they sat down astonished. And he sat there till the evening sacrifice, and he prays to God. And says, look, we were in captivity 70 years. We've come back, a small remnant of us, 50,000 of us, come back here to rebuild the temple. And what are we doing? We just got punished. And now we're doing the same thing that we got punished for. Like, what are we thinking? What are we thinking? What are you doing, Israel? Why are you doing this? We just got judged. And now we're doing the same thing. And he called this great assembly in chapter 10. And now when Ezra had prayed, and when he had confessed, weeping and casting himself down before the throne house of God, there assembled unto him out of Israel a very great congregation of men and women and children. For the people wept sore. They realized what they'd done. Like, you're right, Ezra. You're right, Ezra. What were we thinking? And here's the part that blesses me, and here's what I want to leave us with. It says, and Shechaniah, the son of Jehiel, one of the sons of Elam, answered and said unto Ezra, we have trespassed against our God. He admitted his mistake. We have trespassed against our God. We've taken strange wives of the people of the land. Yet now there is hope in Israel concerning this thing. So he was willing to change. He was willing to be criticized. And that's what gave him hope. That's what ultimately will give us hope. If we can recognize our faults, our weaknesses, and recognize them and call them out and move forward with a solution. Now here's the solution. Now therefore, in this case, let us make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives and such as are born of them, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those that tremble at the commandment of our God, and let it be done according to the law. So Ezra was the one that said, okay, we've sinned against God. And this guy comes on, I'm not sure who he was, Shechaniah his name was, and he says, you're right, Ezra. We've done what was wrong. We are going to fix it. And the solution was not easy. Listen to this. We will put away the wives and those who are born of them. So we're going to send away our own children. We're going to send them away. That is hard. And he says, arise for this. And he says this to Ezra, arise. This matter belongs to you. We also will be with you. Ezra, this is your job, but we will be with you. Be of good courage and do it. Ezra, be of good courage and do it. We're standing behind you. Be of good courage and do it. And then Ezra arose, and the chief priests and the Levites and all Israel, to swear that they would do according to this word. And Ezra gets up and he does what he needs to do. And ultimately, that's what saves Israel here, right? You know, the word here that I'd like to draw out is, or the sentence is, be of good courage and do it. Be of good courage and do it. Where does courage come from? Where does a leader find courage to do what he needs to do? Where are they supposed to get that? Is there something that you get praying to God, and there's a thing called courage. Are they supposed to muster it up? Where's the leader supposed to find the courage to do what they need to do for the good of the whole? They do things that none of us can do. And I'm talking specifically here about our church leaders. I want you all to take this and apply it to them. Where should they get courage from? Where should they find it? Should they dig deep and find a reservoir and bring it up and be courageous? Where should they get it from? Where should they find it? And here is the answer. We don't get courage as a reservoir within our souls. Courage comes from those around us. Courage comes from those near us. I'll read another verse from Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 14. This is when they're actually attacking. The enemy is actually attacking Israel, and they're arming themselves. And he says to them, Nehemiah, this is his encouragement to them, "And I looked up and rose up and said to the nobles and said to the rulers and said to the rest of the people." That's him giving courage. That's what encouragement means, to give courage. Encouragement means to give courage. That's what to encourage someone with. Here's how he's giving them courage. Here's how he's encouraging them. "Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible." This is one of the things that gives us courage. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible. Is there not a cause? That's what gave David courage. That's what gives us courage. That's what gave Nehemiah courage. Remember the Lord, which is great and terrible. Here's the other thing that gives us courage. "And fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your houses." We assemble courage when those around us arise and give us courage. We can't find courage as leaders in and of ourselves. We get courage from our brethren. We get courage from our sons, our daughters, our wives. That's what gives us courage. When they come beside us and say, "We will do what you want us to do. You got this, Ezra, but we're going to stand behind you. Whatever you say, we're going to do. We've got you." That's what gives you courage. What gives a person, a soldier in the trenches, courage is not that they're fighting for king and country. What gives them courage is that there's someone beside them being shot at them at the same time that they're shooting at me. And what often happens in combat situations like that is that they're not fighting for the sake of their country. They're fighting to save the person in the trenches beside them. That's what's giving them courage. It's the person that's sitting in the trenches with them. They're willing to die for them. That's the bond that they have. And that's what gives them the courage to do what they do. They don't see necessarily the big picture of everything. This is my king, my country. I'm going to defend the United States of America and its Constitution. No, they're willing to die for the person beside them, their friend. That's what gives them courage to fight. And my encouragement to us this morning is let's give courage to those that lead. If you're a student, give courage to your teacher. If you're a member here, give courage to your pastor. If you're an employee, give courage to your boss. Wherever you find yourself, be someone that gives courage. And we give courage when we say, "I'm behind you. I'm going to be with me. What do you want from me? I will do it, even if it's difficult. Even if it means hard things." Give courage. We get courage not intrinsically. We can get courage when someone comes behind us and says, "I don't care what you do. I've got your back. I will stand with you. I will be with you. I'll be beside you. I will not flinch. I will not shake back. I will not turn back. I'm with you. I've got you. I support you. I have your back." Do what you need to do. That gives a leader courage to lead. And that's the title of my message this morning, is the courage to lead. The courage to lead. And that's what we need to lead, is courage. And we need to be those that give courage to those that lead. The rest of us that aspire to be leaders, remember the 4 points: the willingness to change, the cause bigger than ourselves, the willingness to be criticized, and the need to be others-focused. There's many other great things here in this book that we could learn from. I'm just going to leave it there. Remember that leaders aren't born, they're made. And they are today the net result of making the right choices, the right decisions again and again and again and again, to the point where they're so transformed that the rest of us look up to them and say, we want to go where you've gone. We see the fruit of your life and we want to follow, we want to emulate. We see what you have and we want to be like that. Those are the people that become our leaders, the people that we want to lead us. They've gone to where we've not gone. We look up to them. We follow their example. And this morning, if you're a leader here, especially the leaders of this congregation, I want to echo the words that Shechaniah gave to Ezra. And I will say to you that lead. Take courage and lead. I stand behind you. I'll give you what I've